Welcome back to the PreVetted Podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, we're joined by Brent Hagan. He's Chief Supply Chain Officer at Lob, where he leads the logistics, manufacturing, and operations behind the platform that has powered billions of personalized direct mail pieces. Brent has led supply chain at scale across Amazon, Deliverr, which was acquired by Shopify, and now Lob, where he built a tech-enabled logistics network from the ground up. Brent, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored to have you here today. For people meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Lob is a direct mail automation platform, and my team operates behind the scene to create a seamless experience for the customers. So from after they've built their creative for whatever campaign it is that they want to do, that could be your W-2, that could be a new Black Friday sale that's coming through, and everything in between. We've built a manufacturing, fulfillment, logistics network that supports all of that with AI, the hot phrase out there, embedded in between, helping us make critical decisions. I think the most interesting part about it is that all of this is operated in a third-party manner. So we have third-party manufacturing and logistics embedded throughout. So we have no inherent fixed cost, capital manufacturing cost.
Right. Yeah, it's a very unique problematic, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of physical mail, right?
Yes. Yeah, we do hundreds of millions of mail pieces every single year. And we do it quite reliably, 99% on time delivery, which is something we're really proud of.
Right. With such a volume, a single mistake can multiply so fast.
It can. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you begin to look at, like, we just got out of Q1, and everyone knows early Q1 is tax filing season, and April 15th was just here for all of your US listeners. And so getting those in the mailbox on time, there's federal guidelines that state how long companies have to do that. And so our backs are really against the wall to make sure that even when problems go wrong, that they're solved in a really timely manner.
Right. And I had a friend that used to work on a tire factory, right? And the process to cure the tire, right, was not visible immediately, but then when they do quality checks, they had batches they could not sell them, they could not destroy them, or that required, another operation. So he had warehouses full of tires, right? Because he couldn't have them on the factory as well. So he was managing that, and he would end up like renting warehouses in the area just to hide the tires, right? So that's where I learned that automation is great, but a single mistake can multiply so big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a video the other day, and this podcaster goes into like old abandoned buildings and areas and documents them. And one of the ones that he started to do was there's a number of resorts around Disney World in Orlando that have completely aged out. And a lot of it came as a result of the closest properties to Disney for a really long time weren't owned by Disney. They were managed by somebody else. And then Disney said, like, why don't we just start building our own resorts that are right next to our properties and managing those? And so these properties, like the ones the guy was visiting, they couldn't obviously keep up with creating the same experience that Disney could. So eventually they went out of business. And so this guy was touring around this place that's been closed for 30 years or something like that.
Wow.
And inside of the large conference center, which obviously there was animals in there was all kinds of trash, and some people obviously had started to kind of live in there at times too. But one thing that was super interesting based on what you were saying, somebody had decided to take all their used tires from their like repair site or whatever, and they started dumping there was thousands and thousands of used tires dumped inside of this old conference center. And so I had not thought about that until you literally just brought it up. And I'm like, what in the world? But it's such an interesting problem. Like they have to go somewhere.
Right. I mean, for me, it reminds me this movie from Disney in the 40s, Fantasia, where, Mickey Mouse is slashing, the brooms, right? The magic
Yeah,
brooms, and, more and more keep coming up, right? I felt that, uh, a quality check issue on an automated process can create that chaos.
absolutely. That's right.
So you started in manufacturing and operation engineering and worked your
Yeah.
way to C-suite, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
What did that hands-on foundation give you that you still rely on today?
I think it's an appreciation for reality. I think you pretty quickly learn that the best laid plans on paper don't always materialize into reality. It also gave me an appreciation for understanding constraints and respecting the work that people on the floor do, as well as the work that is expected of your frontline leaders on the floor. The problems that we often ask them to solve, a lot of times those decisions aren't being made by people who understand the actual constraints that can happen. And so that's really impacted the entire way that I think about how do you build action plans, how do you build leader standard work, and how do you even execute a strategy to deliver on the outcomes that business wants to generate. We have to have every level of the organization involved in that to understand how they influence it. And that all, it actually goes even before that. When I was a kid growing up, my dad ran manufacturing companies my entire life. And so he actually started as a tool and die maker working in a machine shop. And then by the time he retired, he was VP of engineering for a $1 billion tier one automotive supplier. And so going to work with him on like Saturdays and seeing him walk around the shop floor, which was kind of interesting in and of itself, like a 9-year-old in a manufacturing site walking around 2000-degree molten magnesium and aluminum while my dad, was smoking cigarettes walking down the aisle, like none of which would be allowed in today's in today's work cultures. But it was always really important to him to manage the same guy on the shop floor as he does the same guy in the proverbial necktie, and treat them the same way, and value their insights equally. And so I've kind of really carried all that forward with me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, now that would not be allowed, but it gives you such a unique experience, right? Yeah. The other thing I've been learning about is this idea of, you know what entails on most of the tasks, on the operation. So when you're delegating with that context and that knowledge, right?
Yeah, it's so valuable doing it that way, for sure.
Right. Right. And what you're asking the people to do is something that you've already done, right? So that gives you more trust with your team as well, right?
Yeah, you definitely gain some credibility that way when you can say, and this actually goes back to my dad as well. I can remember when he got his first like executive job, and he started wearing dress pants and stuff to work every day. We're sitting there at dinner, and he was telling me that his boss, who was actually the new CEO of the company at the time, my dad had moved a maintenance guy out of the way during a plant tour on a machine that was broken, and he started fixing it. And the CEO was like, "You can't do that anymore, man." He's like, you have to teach them how to do it and how to think like you. And again, like it's a lesson that I take forward. One of the pieces I talk to my team about pretty frequently is that I think the best and the worst thing that could happen is that I have to do their job for a day or a week or something like that. Like I'm going to get a sense of what they go through. And I think that they're going to like that I have to kind of go through some of the pains that they do. It's also one of the worst things that can probably happen to both of us, because I'm going to get really into it. I'm probably going to leave there for an appreciation for my employee for sure. But also, I'm probably going to want to change some of the stuff they do and how they do it, which is going to be frustrating for them. But we each get to learn as a result of it.
One of the key steps that I've started doing when I start hiring is pair programming. This is for hiring software engineers, right? And the intention is to simulate as close as possible what it's working with that person every single day, right? In a small, hour to hour session, right?
Sure.
One of the things, that I found out is I did this like pairing session for a day, right? Where they come to the office, we work together for a day. I had a candidate who would look at the clock every single, uh, 15 minutes to leave, right? And 10 minutes to leave, right? And I was more focused on let's finish, the task at hand, right? We're so close. And when you see those attitudes, you start realizing, on those little details, you start realizing who is a good worker that is going to work hard and who is not, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the same
Yeah.
thing happens, right? Oh, go ahead.
No, please finish.
The same thing happens on manufacturing. Like how do you get innovation bottom up, right? First, you need to get people that are curious to do things better, and then you need to foster the environment so they are comfortable speaking up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to, that goes back to a piece that you were talking about with credibility as well. Like building that trust and credibility is critical in order to move the business forward. Because people are going to feel really comfortable speaking up. But I think of my first plant manager job. I was 27, 28, which was, pretty young to be a plant manager and have my own site. My predecessor gave me a departing gift, which was that he approved a 6-week vacation for my materials planner to go to Guatemala from Thanksgiving until after New Year's. And I found out about it like a few months into my brand new job. And so she's telling me about this and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to need to hire like a temp to come in and learn your role and do these things, which we did. And he ended up being absolutely awful. I mean, he was so bad. And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'm going to I didn't, it was a really small site. Like we were like 100 people, and you just don't have redundant resources that can just, pick up the slack like that in a site that small. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. So before I fired the temp, I was like, well, let me work with you, and learn some of this. Maybe I can take some of it off. And so 2-3 weeks in, I let him go and I took over the entire role, but I had to figure out how to do it in like 2 hours a day, right? Because it's not like I was sitting on all this extra time. And so by the time she got back, I had figured out how to do her entire job in 2 hours a day. And she came back and I had all these new cubbies that I had set up, and I had set up a FIFO system and, as well as all of that was pulled with Kanban cards from the floor. And she's like, how'd everything go? And I was like, great. We have an entire new system that you get to learn. I was like, I'm really excited that you're back. And it just like blew up her entire world. But she really liked it, afterwards. And obviously, I gained a lot of credibility with her as well as the team of like, I totally understood our material flow coming out of that. So it was a great life lesson and work lesson for me as well. But even with teams of any size, the piece that I want all of my teams to be able to do is have reconciliation points within their work to talk about what are we doing really well, what's going wrong within our work, and what do we learn from both of those, right? And how do we get better as a result? And I want them to be able to clearly articulate that, but also tie it back to our KPIs and the business outcomes that we want to I think when we're able to do that, that gives them a piece of ownership in what we're trying to accomplish, right? Like, and they can feel like they're a part of the solution because they're a critical piece to what we're trying to do as a business. And it also gives them accountability towards improving the business and executing their job really well, right? And so like that becomes kind of a full circle solve for the company.
Wow, that's amazing. I studied Taylor and Fayol, that they studied the specialization of manufacturing of metallic pins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right during the Industrial Revolution, right? And how specialization was the way to improve manufacturing up to a point where the repetitive tasks was too boring for the human, quality went down, right? But a lot of the concepts still remain, right? Anyway, I think that being able to foster that environment, build authority and trust with your team, right, is a different way, a dynamic to build authority with a technical team than it is with an executive team, right? They have different set of values, if you like, right?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
And from that, being able to give them the environment so they can foster. And the way that I see it is that the manager should encourage the team to become better than they were as individual contributors. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And some of it, people talk about like servant leadership or autocratic or democratic and what all of that looks like. And I've never been one to want to like choose and fit myself into a single bucket. The piece that is important for me is I want my teams, and this is true when I had frontline leaders reporting to me. Like, I want them to feel autonomy to like be themselves and manage their teams the best way that they see fit. But we're going to need to do that under some really basic principles, and that goes back to what I was saying, like what went right, what went wrong, what did we learn from both of those, and we're going to do that on a daily, weekly, monthly cadence, and we're going to continue to get better as a business, right? And as long as you can tie your outcomes or your actions to the outcomes we want to generate, I don't really care what you work on, right? Like I might influence of like, hey, like we noticed that we've had these quality escalations lately, or we've had, back before we managed third parties, like we had these safety incidences. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we have to solve those and guide them in some of those key areas. But how they want to solve those and getting their teams behind them, like I want them to have that autonomy to be able to do that.
Right. I mean, my first thought as a manager was occupancy. 100% occupancy of workload. Then we're optimizing, but then
Yeah.
I'm not leaving room for optimization, for people to be more creative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was this years old when I realized that it's better to have some occupancy available so people can do rest a little bit or can become creative. It's a process that needs to happen naturally.
It is. Yeah. There's a piece that comes up. So a lot of times when you see, especially in manufacturing and fulfillment, companies that are rolling out their first like lean initiatives, a lot of they'll jump to Gemba and daily Gemba, right? And doing floor walks with visual boards that show data trends and that sort of thing. And the topic that always comes up 100% of the time when you're rolling this out for the first time is, how do you make up for the downtime that's going to create? Because you're pulling everyone off the floor to be able to do these things. Morning stretches is the same way, right? Like companies that dedicate 10 minutes a morning to morning stretches, like that's all indirect labor time that you have to pay for. And so are the improvements that you're seeing as a business paying for that time? And people have a really hard time at first making that leap from A to B, right? Like, we weren't doing it, now we're going to do it, because they're saying, I automatically am losing 10 minutes of productivity in my first hour every single day, right? Or I'm losing 15 minutes in my third hour every single day because I'm doing Gemba. Right. And so now I have 25 minutes of productivity on an 8-hour shift that I have to make up for. And so we've got to be able to measure that and show them like, well, you've had a reduction in your injuries, you've had an increase in your productivity. It's the same with you and the concept that you're taking. One of the things that you see with engineering teams all the time, a lot with software engineering teams, are no meeting Wednesdays. So they can just put their headphones on, put their head down and code. Right. With the ideas, like they have all the context that they need, to be able to thrive and just do their work. And are they going to gain value from that? So I think it's all the same concept.
Yeah. And the first time I thought about this type of things, I did the math of, how much we're paying to everybody, how much does this 1 hour meeting is going to cost the company, right? So you have 5 people, 10 people, and it's scary at first because those numbers go high very quickly, right?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah, and when you cannot measure the ROI exactly, you start getting nervous, right, as a manager. But the benefits are there, right? It's the idea of sharpening the axe, right? Allows you to be more productive throughout the days, right? And
Yeah.
what you're talking about interruptions, yeah, I experienced myself that because going from an individual contributor to managing a team, now I have more and more interruptions. So I figured out that I should be protecting my team from interruptions so they can focus on building. And it is what you're talking about. I think that the difference between manufacturing and software engineers is that in software engineers, you don't see the dead bodies. You don't see the products that failed for whatever reason,
Yeah,
or the rework, right?
for sure.
So I wanted to talk about kind of changing topics. When companies acquire other companies, cultural fit and technology integration often get underestimated, right? What have you
Yeah.
learned about making acquisitions actually work?
Well, there's definitely a few things. I think first, like you have to decide really early on, are we going to integrate this business or are we going to operate it independently? Because that's going to change a lot of things. And there can't be a middle ground either, right? Like what systems are we going to force on the acquiring company? Do they have systems that we're going to want to integrate into? And what does that look like, right? Like, are we shuttering all the buildings um and moving the people somewhere? Like what are those things? And all that comes down to culture, for sure, and the impact that's going to have on the business. And I think that there has to be really clear direction on which way you're going to take that culture. And if the business is operating independently, maybe it's not as serious of an issue as it would be if you're fully integrating it into kind of your umbrella company. But I think anywhere in between, like leaving questions around like, well, what's going to happen to the business? Are we going to operate independently? Or are we going to do full integration? Like that causes concern for people. And it's already a scary time. And so when that happens, like productivity is just going to nosedive, like automatically, because people are
Right.
going to be distracted. So being able to provide that clarity as quickly and as clearly as possible has always been really, really important to me.
Right. Right. I think it's one of the reasons a company is acquired is because they have that culture, right? But in the process, management kind of forget about that and they want to impose one culture into another company, and that could be a recipe for disaster.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and it's not a copy paste job. It doesn't
Right.
work that way. Like each company, even if a company is being acquired, right? Like if they're being acquired because they're cash constrained and they're going through difficult financial times, or they're being offloaded by private equity, or because they're subject matter experts in the space, right? And a larger company wants to buy this really great tangential thing to their overall business. Either one of those scenarios, you have a built-in culture and operating system that people have really put a lot of time and effort to, and they're going to have a certain affinity for operating that way. And whether you're acquiring for whatever reason you're acquiring the company, like that has to be appreciated and respected, and understand like, okay, how do we get them to operate the way that we want to, that respects some of the cultural differences. I've been a part of some really good ones, and I've been a part of some really, really bad ones. I was a part of an acquisition one time where the company flat out said in our first integration meeting was that, well, we're going to do it this way. And the question was, well, why? Why are we doing it that way? And it was their way. We're going to do it this way. And I asked, I was like, why? And they said, well, because we're buying you. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's really like, so that doesn't feel good at all. But two, like you're buying us because we're the best at what we do, and you're not, right? Like you tried to build it your way and you couldn't. So you went and bought us as a shortcut. So why would we adopt your way that didn't work? And it
Right.
was just dead silent. It was completely dead silent. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why are we going backwards? And so that was an example of where the culture was pretty challenged.
Right. right? What I've seen happening in a lot of organizations is that the bigger the organization, the more crystallized the structure becomes, right? And we're doing things this way because we're doing things this way. We haven't like thought about why we're doing it this way, right? And a few times there are bad actors, but most of the time is good actors that basically get in that comfort zone, right? So when an organization buys another organization, they have the opportunity to kind of reshuffle that, break up those current structures and allow the value of the organization and culture that is coming in to be integrated, right? And I think that that way it's a benefit for both.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree.
I've done the other way around as well. I mean, I've done culture isolation where we build our own culture in our own team, and because the team is in Mexico and the rest of the team is in the US, we're able to kind of like the phoenix, rebuild our culture from within, right? So we were a little bit isolated, so we were able to build a better culture that then eventually went towards the other team. They were like, oh, that's interesting what you guys are doing. We want to copy it and take it to our teams, right? So I found that very interesting. Yeah,
I do too. And the way in which I think about that, and I know you and I touched on this, briefly in our pre-meeting about when I was doing due diligence on a company in Mexico. Is going to be basically an acqui-hire scenario for us and hiring a engineering team based out of Tijuana. And a lot of that comes down to trust and clarity for me. When we talk about clarity, you talk about like explaining the why. And so the scenarios of not like, well, you're going to do it this way because that's the way that we do it, but why do we do it this way? Right? Like we've built these processes to deliver on this result, and let's explain like what that result is, why it's important to the business, and how our decisions directly impact that. When you can do that and you can apply that sort of clarity, brings trust with it. Like these guys, and also listen to them around like why they like their processes. And maybe there is a middle ground to be had there. But either way, like taking the time to have those clarifying discussions builds so much trust, and obviously the large impactful business outcomes that come with it.
Right. I do the same when I do pairing, or when I hire somebody, or just when I reviewing some other people's work. I ask why. Why this? Why this? Why this? And sometimes I do the 3 whys, the why of the why, right? And and what I notice very quickly, you can notice when it's a shallow why, right? Well, because I've been told to, right? That's yeah.
Yeah.
On my practice as a software engineer, I took me a while to get into this, but I got to the point of understanding what is the value for the user. We're building a feature, okay, and the product owner is providing me the requirements. That's great, but why? What is the most important value for the user? And put a priority of values, right? That way I can not only make sure that the expected behavior works as it should, but also I can write automated tests to make sure that it works, right? So if you go to the ATM, you want cash, right? One of the operations, right? But you want cash in hand, right? It doesn't matter if the screen has some, fading colors. It doesn't matter if a light is not working. Cash in hand is the most important thing, right? So understanding that allows you to build automated tests to make sure that always happen, right? And then everything else becomes secondary, right? And it's basically getting to a point where I could understand the impact, of the product to the user, rather than just, I build this because that's the requirement.
Yeah, for sure.
So what drew you to Lob, and what did it take to build a logistic network inside a SaaS company?
Yes, it's a really good question. I was actually on a sabbatical when I got called by the recruiter for Lob, and it was someone that I'd known and talked to in a few different times, and he was like, "Oh, I think you're really going to like this." I was like, "Well, I'm not really exploring yet. Like, I'm enjoying time with my family, my wife and kids." And he's like, "No," he's like, "You need to listen to this one." I was like, "Well, what do they do?" And he's like, "They do direct mail." I'm like, "What does that mean?" And he was like, he's like, they make and send the mail. I'm like the mailbox mail? And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why would that be interesting to me?" And he's like, you need to just meet these guys. He's like, I think you'll be blown away. And so I met the guy who's now our CEO, Ryan Ferrier, who's been my boss the entire time, and was just blown away by where the company was, some of their major pain points, and who, he thought they could be, and where he thought I could add value in that. And there was just this really interesting scenario where 100% Lob historically wanted to be focused on the front end digital orchestration of mail, and that's where we gained our name. It's the original API in direct mail. It's still the best API in direct mail. But where we struggled was on the back end, with really building the physical supply chain that supported it. We were dealing with significant cost proliferation, quality issues, and all the things that go with sort of some of the rampant scale that they had seen, and add in, kind of a startup environment, if you will, on top of that. And so all these struggles were there. And so that was something where it was like, I just love doing that stuff. Like those are problems that I love fixing. And one thing that I really hadn't got a chance to do was, which very people get the opportunity, is the USPS itself is 251 years old. I think Benjamin Franklin was the original Postmaster General, and he was named Postmaster General in like 1775. All right. So like this is a very old industry, and our largest competitor in this space is 150 years old. And so our ability to take the digital infrastructure that we'd already created and pair that into a physical network that has really remained the same for decades for the most part. There's been very limited innovation, especially in the middle mile transportation piece related to the USPS in a really long time. Like that was something that was like, wow, like that's a lot of fun, and so especially leaving e-commerce, where I came from, which has rampant innovation, but it's really only like Amazon was founded in 1996, something like that. So it's a 30-year-old company, 95, somewhere around there. So it's a 30-year-old company, and it's the best and the brightest, and everyone's tried to kind of keep up with them, which means like rampant iterations of innovation. That's just not the case here. And so what can we build, or what have we built that's truly defensible and creates a large moat for us? And what can we add to that in terms of incremental offerings? Like, so all of that came up in my mind, like when I was evaluating, like, do I really want to move into direct mail?
Very interesting. The issue with a company that's 150 years old is that the level of innovation is very minimal. Right.
Yeah.
And you come in from outside the industry, you can ask questions and get to non-traditional solutions that somebody that has been in the industry forever could not figure out. Right. So you can basically reshuffle the whole board.
For sure. Yeah. We're doing that right now. So the way Lob has been built on the manufacturing side is we leverage third-party manufacturing, but we actually own patents on technology that takes these regionally based print manufacturers and their manufacturing permutations and the way in which we route material to them, our demand to them. And so we were able to treat that manufacturing network as if it's, one completely integrated entity versus a bunch of third-party manufacturers who otherwise have nothing to do with each other. And one of the things that we did when I got here was I wanted to start removing some of their responsibility and go back to basic principles of why do we operate with third-party manufacturers. And a lot of it has to do with the total scale and the geographical disbursement. But ultimately, it comes down to a function of fixed cost. We don't really today want to own those fixed assets and leverage our cash to buy them versus going to print manufacturers who are very good at what they do, which is manufacturing the mail, and having them do it for us. So I wanted to start taking all of their activities that didn't have to do with the actual manufacturing of the product and say, like, we're going to take those over. And so a lot of that included beginning to source our own procurement, paper, envelopes, like that sort of thing on our own behalf. So every site was using the same stuff. And obviously there's cost benefits that go to the economies of scale that Lob operates with at, which is larger than most of the printers that are in our network. So we're much larger than each one of them. But then as well as beginning to look at middle mile logistics, especially middle mile sortation. And so I had asked someone on my team when we were looking at that, I was like, we go to really like 2-3 partners across all of our middle mile needs, commingling, drop ship, all of our material movements. And why is that? Like, why isn't our network built the same way, our logistics network, as our manufacturing network, right? Like leverage regionals, some mom and pops, some multi-region companies, and combined all those together. And the answer I got back was like, well, that would be really hard. You can't do that. Like the contract structures won't let you do it. You have to combine their technologies and integrate them together on a common system, which we don't have. I'm like, well, let's just go do that. Like, why not? And so the one Goliath in that space, they're the only one with true national representation. They've got a ton of capacity, but you really pay for the convenience of working with them because they're the only ones that have it. And so I'm like, well, so we begin building our own logistics API, and we begin setting up regional logistics contracts. And then we decide which player needs to be involved at one time. And we orchestrate that between our customers' actual physical delivery needs, the manufacturer that we're choosing and the region that we're choosing in, and who needs to be present in the middle to connect all of that to the USPS to meet that final mile that I was just talking to you about. And it's worked really great. And to the point where we've begun selling it as a new revenue stream for us called Lob Logistics. And the idea, to your point, came from someone who was just asking a really ignorant question because I didn't know how the industry worked. I'm like, well, it feels like we could solve all of this. It took us 2 years to solve all of it, but we did solve it. And it's something that we're really excited about.
That's amazing. I mean, yes, it's what I was talking about. I mean, you come with curiosity, asking questions that nobody asks anymore because this is how we do things, right?
Yeah, that was the exact answer I got back. Well, we don't do it that way because you can't. It's like, well, why can't we? I don't understand. Why can't we? We literally already did it over here. Why can't we do it the same way?
Right. And in those questions, when you figure out those things, that's when you can get the innovation and have the most significant impact on both the organization and the industry, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. And from when we were talking about that, you can offer that platform to other people and get another revenue stream that proves that there's value into that platform, right? That, there's traction into it. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've started booking revenue. We've got a handful of customers already. We have an incredibly attractive pipeline that's actually a larger pipeline than our traditional lob business. And we've done all of this. We started building it it'll be 2 years in June, and we started selling it in the last 8 months. So we've done all that in 8 months, which is just unbelievable.
Right. That's amazing. And it's basically entrepreneurship, right? Just a technical word, but it's basically applying the same experience you had building other companies to just one particular process within a larger organization, right?
Yeah. And it's true 0 to 1 for sure. It's a brand new customer base. We obviously, we have the backing of Lob as a business, but it's true 0 to 1, but you're absolutely right. It's a kind of, call it a skunk works project and in a larger company.
That's amazing. And the other thing that happened with that is that you can see the impact on the business directly. So I was wondering, how have you been leveraging AI into the manufacturing process? Are you using it to analyze data? Are you using it to automate processes?
Yeah, good question. It's one I meet with my team, like my 4 direct reports, every Monday and Friday, kind of no matter what. And we've got a pretty static agenda. And then we just kind of go through like ideation, and what's everybody working on, but what do they want to work on, and what are things that they're thinking about, and how did they think about it? And I brought this up to them of where, like, I feel like we've grown stale a little bit on how we solve problems and look at patterns within the business to generate actions. And I started asking them, like, where can we introduce AI to start, like, poking holes? To your point, like, even if AI gives a silly response back, like one that makes us think about something, because we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, why doesn't it make sense? And really start kind of breaking our own logic. Right now, we're traditionally using AI on daily decision making, routing, batching, forecasting. I want to start using it more to identify inefficiencies. We have quality measures across every manufacturing permutation as well as from site to site. And I want to start looking at corollaries there, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be using AI tools to start breaking, some of that logic and identifying those trends. Like all that data is already sitting in those dashboards. Like let's have them do that. Additionally, there's some good tools out there that can integrate into all of our workflows, like our Slack workflow, Jira, Asana, and all of that. And it can pull all of that into, single source dashboards. So you gain some efficiency right there, but as well as it starts looking at patterns of things that are coming up. And so those are the primary use cases. Like there aren't scenarios with my team where AI is completely supplementing what anyone on my team does. What I want it to do is increase their total throughput and help us get to a better state faster.
Very interesting. I'm writing a book about software engineering, managing software engineering teams, culture, and one of the things that I argue is that context is the most important competitive advantage for a team. Having a long tenure senior team that is committed to the work, because those are the people that are going to be able to leverage agents much more than somebody new that comes to the team, right? Because it's people that know about the business rules, know about where are the bottlenecks or the issues, right? And can guide the agents to be better on automating the process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I put all of my papers and stuff that we write, and we're a document heavy company for sure, just how we operate. And I put all of them into my Chat GPT conversation, so it can load all of them in there, right? And I'll ask it questions like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Like, break this assumption. Help me add context here." And there are days where I just want to get a thought out, and I need to put together a 1-pager or a 2-pager about this thought, and so I'll just spit into Chat GPT of like, "Hey, these are all the things that I'm thinking about. Help me organize these thoughts, and what should I do next?" And the prompts and the way it makes me begin to think about that next step, like it's so beneficial. I don't want it to become a crutch, like I want to be able to free think on my own, but it's like you're talking to a friend who has all of the context in the world about you and your business. You know what I mean? And it's been an amazing tool for me.
Completely agree. I've been able to use it a lot to sort my thoughts. I describe it that I argue with the agents, right? And I ask the agents to critique my work, to my thoughts, give me ideas, and they give you such a raw, so it's hilarious, such a raw feedback. It's like, "You suck here. You're making amazing here." Right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And you can provide rules of what you want to do. And then, it's very interesting. What I haven't figured out yet is how to share that experience with my team, so we can have this shared knowledge of how we do things, right? Right now, each of us has our own, agents and memories. It's not something that I want to share everything with my team, right? I want to have these little bubbles where we can share stuff, right? So that's the next thing I'm trying to figure out how to do. Can you tell us a little bit what is the hardest operational problem you ever had to solve?
Hardest operational problem. This is one that I thought about a lot. My time at Deliverr was really hard. Like those were really hard problems to solve, and both when you look at the scale in which we were operating at, as well as the velocity in which it was required that we work. Right, like it was the fastest growing technology company to $200 million in revenue in history. The network was not built well initially. Like it was built for kind of like ultimate infinite scale, which involves bringing on just an unbelievable amount of third-party fulfillment capacity and that sort of thing, which the ironic part about that is like that model doesn't scale, literally at all. And so That was a challenge, especially when you look at the overall macro environment. Coming out of COVID, e-commerce was the hottest thing out there, right? Like there was tons of VC money. Amazon was obviously going crazy with what they were doing. Salaries across the board, operations, engineering, product, everywhere. It was very expensive to go and recruit people. And then you have to give them that context. Like you and I were just talking about on what the business does, how we think about solving these problems in the space and why it's differentiated. And so at that point, you're beginning to build the plane while it's already taken off. And so that can be a huge challenge. Same way with Amazon though. Amazon is very much the same way. Those buildings typically in their first 90 days scale from literally 0 employees to within by 8 weeks, 9 weeks before it's launched, you have 155 salaried managers. By day 14 or maybe day 14, day 21 of it launching, you probably have 1,200 employees on site. That can come with significant challenges. How do you bring problem solving into a site when you're bringing employees in at that rate? How do you establish a day one culture and maintain that culture that it always looks the same and you're creating the same experience for everyone, no matter whether they came in on day one where everyone's still figuring out their own job and how it operates versus, day one of year 3. And so that can be a challenge in and of itself too. So like I'm really fortunate in my career to have gotten to solve a lot of really unique, really hard problems. And it's probably why I look like I'm 50, even though I'm only, 25 years old. But I've been really fortunate to be surrounded by great people to solve those problems with.
Amazing. And we're running out of time. I truly appreciated you being here today. Any final advice, remarks, or do you want to share a little bit more of the future of Lob?
No, I was able to talk about Lob Logistics and something that we're really excited about. We believe that's our next frontier in building an end-to-end supply chain orchestration engine in the direct mail space. It's a very unique problem to solve, and one that I would love to talk to your listeners about. And they can always reach out to me on LinkedIn to have those conversations.
Great. We're going to leave your LinkedIn in the description below so people can reach out.
Great. I look forward to it.
Great. Brent, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much.